on abortion. They said you had a better record than Senator McCain, but that they weren't going to endorse you. What do you think about that kind of thinking at this stage of the race?
Obviously, I wish they would. I do have the best record of anybody running. In fact, I have the best record of anybody who has run, period, in this presidential cycle, Democrat, Republican, from those who ever thought about it to those who are still on their feet. Nobody else has actually helped lead a human life amendment in his own state, which I did. Passed 11 different pro-life pieces of legislation. We have numerous chapters of Right to Life all over the country who have endorsed us, from Montana to Kansas to Arkansas to Georgia to Alabama. Goodness, all over the country. I can't even begin to enumerate how many different ones Right to Life chapters have. So certainly I think true Right to Life advocates would realize that there's only one choice. I'm the only candidate who supports both the Human Life Amendment and supports a discontinuation of human embryonic stem cell research. That's a key area where Senator McCain and I are doing. Yes, sir.
Doing a story on energy and the environment. Could you briefly distinguish your position? You talked a little bit about energy independence. Distinguish your position from Senator McCain's, if there's
I'm
a
not
difference.
that familiar with his. I know I have probably taken the only position that we should be energy independent within 10 years, which is a rather bold position, but it's one that I think is capable of happening, but only if it has the kind of leadership that I'm ready to bring to it. We can't continue to put this off. I remember in 1973 when Richard Nixon said we'll have Project Energy Independence. Well, 5 years later, Jimmy Carter said we would do it. And then a few years later, Ronald Reagan said we would do it. We've never done it. And the result is we are now economically and environmentally hamstrung by the fact that we continue to depend upon fossil fuels and foreign oil. And it's time for it to stop. And it's not going to stop until somebody draws a line in the sand and says, this is the deadline, this is what we're going to do. And when we get there, I don't think it'll be that there's a magic silver bullet in this. I think it's a combination of many sources of environmentally safe and valuable, domestically produced alternative forms of energy. If we turn the innovation and technology loose in this country, I'm quite convinced that we're more than capable of getting there. I remember as a little kid John F. Kennedy saying we'll put a man on the moon in 10 years and bring him home. 8 years later we had done it. It's a pretty big deal to do that. When we started out with the technology of bottle rockets for all practical purposes. And we're so much further along. We're not that far off from battery-powered cars that don't pollute and from the capacity to generate our own electricity with things we can produce ourselves. Yes.
Sir, after being swept in the Potomac primaries, how do you see your chances in Wisconsin?
I think Wisconsin voters are going to act very independently of the Beltway voters. What we had last night was essentially the people of the Beltway who are clearly, I think, out of touch with a lot of folks in the rest of the heartland. And if you look at the Virginia totals in particular, we won all through the rural areas. Where we got creamed was in those areas around Washington, D.C. I've never had a Washington address, and I think that's a plus, not a minus, in asking for the votes of people in Wisconsin.
Governor,
yes.
Sir, with all due respect, why are you leaving the trail and the country to go give a paid speech in the Cayman Islands this weekend?
Real simple, because I'm the only person that doesn't get paid by the taxpayers to campaign. Senator Clinton, Senator Obama, Senator McCain campaign every day, and I'm paying for their campaigns. I'm paying because I'm a taxpayer, and I have to pay for their Senate salaries even if they're not on duty. The taxpayers aren't paying a dime for me to campaign, and I don't take anything from my campaign, so I have to make a living. I do that through my writing and my speaking. I've been doing that for quite some time. This is particularly an event that's been on my calendar for a number of months. It's also one that I did several years ago. It's a group of young professionals. They give a leadership award. I spoke at their very first event like this. I think it's been 10 years ago. They've invited me back, and it's been on my calendar for several months. And so I'll be on the campaign trail through Friday. I'll be gone Saturday. I'll be back Sunday, so I'll be gone for one day. Nobody asked Senator McCain where he was last weekend when he was gone off the trail. I'm telling you where I'm going to be. Told you up front. There'll be a few other times when I've got to go out and make sure that I can pay my mortgage payment just like everybody else has to do. I'm not independently wealthy. I wish I was.
Governor, you suggested in your speech that you majored in miracles and not math.
Yeah.
Would you consider being the Republican vice presidential candidate part of that miracle that you've been majoring in?
That's not even something I'm up for discussion on, because it's not my decision to make, number one. I doubt it will ever be presented to me. And thirdly, last time I checked, I'm still running for president. I thought we had some signs back here, but oh, they're up here. And all of them still say Huckabee for president. My experience in life is if you set a goal and you have a secondary goal that's easier, at some point when things get really, really tough, if you're not careful, you'll fall for the easier task. So I've not allowed myself to start thinking about the what ifs and what if I don't win and all the other things. I've been asked a lot of questions. Would I run for the Senate? I've been absolutely adamant that I won't. In fact, I've told people that yesterday I was in Washington, and my comment was that there's a greater chance of me dyeing my hair green, being tattooed all over my body, and going on tour with Amy Winehouse than, for example, running for the U.S. Senate. And I have no intentions of doing anything right now other than running for president.
Governor,
Yes,
I'm a reporter with Marquette University. A good portion of your supporters are adults with families.
Mm-hmm.
What are a couple reasons why students at campuses across the state of Wisconsin should support your campaign over McCain's or Obama's or other candidates?
I think the fact that I do understand that the decisions of the next president will affect college students for the next 65 years, not just for the next 30 or 35 like they will affect my own life and generation. But I'm also one candidate who's taken a very comprehensive approach when it comes to looking at issues that are going to touch the lives of your students at Marquette and everywhere else. And for example, whether it's energy independence, whether it's changing the ground rules of the economy by the fair tax, because right now a lot of the students who come out won't come out with a job. They'll come out with a huge debt on their backs just to pay off their education. And because we are squeezing jobs from this country, we have 2 million people that are facing foreclosure. They're not exactly jumping out of the pool of grads at a great time in the economy. Somebody's got to address that. As a governor, I've looked at all of these issues, every single one of them: transportation, infrastructure, education, health care, law and order, crime. I've seen it, I've dealt with it, but I've been a chief executive. Actually balanced the budget, not just voted on one. And I think that that is the kind of experience that college students would say, he's actually been there before. And I think those are the key questions.
One more question.
Excuse me. Does it bother you at all that you will be out of the country for 48 hours at a time when you are considered to be the underdog and you're fighting to get the nomination?
No, it bothers me more that I'm having to go out of the country to make money to pay for the other guys that you and I are paying for. That I'm having to fund candidates who get a federal taxpayer paycheck whether they show up for the job and vote or not. That I have to still pay my bills and I have to pay theirs. And I'm subsidizing my opponents in that way. I think people of America who understand that you've got to work for your living and pay your bills recognize that that's exactly what I ought to be doing. And to be off the campaign trail for an ever so brief period of time when I'm going to be on the trail a whole lot more than I think my opponents will be when I am on the trail, I can't imagine anybody except maybe one of my opponents having a problem with that. But they're so used to having the taxpayers fund their day-to-day existence, plus all the perks that go with that, that they probably have never thought about the fact that, and particularly McCain-Feingold has been a really, really detrimental part of creating the kind of situation where if you're not personally wealthy, it's really tough to run for office. It's one reason I think that bill has been a horrible detriment to electoral politics in this country, and it needs to be overhauled and overthrown.
Just one last question on the
Okay.
Cayman Islands. You've been very critical of the offshore banking community there. I think you said it's like a $12 trillion drain on the U.S. economy.
It's not all there, but it's offshore. Some of it is there.
Don't you think that there's some contradiction in the middle of a presidential campaign when you've been criticizing this community to go there, to participate in an event, and when you're there, will you speak out and be critical and call for reforms of that banking system?
Well, okay, first of all, let's get something straight. I'm not going to be taking money and parking into the Cayman Islands. I'm going to get enough money to come back and pay about 40% in taxes on what I earn. There's a big difference. My money's coming back to the U.S., and the IRS is going to get most of it. So there's a big difference. I may go down there and visit one of those post office boxes where some of the other candidates have their money, and maybe one of those banks, and see what it looks like down there. But I'm going to make a speech. That's it. It's what I do. and I'll be off the trail one day. I'll be here Friday, be gone Saturday, be back Sunday. In the meantime, if Senator McCain and his colleagues in the Senate would like to pass a bill that would let other candidates get taxpayer-funded financing for their campaigns so they can get the same salaries that senators and congressmen do, that'd be terrific. But they didn't write the law that way. And they don't have to take part of the money when they're on the campaign trail and not doing one thing for the citizens, but only doing it for their campaign. They don't have to reimburse that money back to the taxpayers. So I'm paying taxes. They're taking the taxes that I'm going to pay coming back, and they'll be able to live off of it. I think that's a pretty good deal for them and a pretty lousy one for me.
But while you're in the
How much is
Cayman
the young
Islands,
Cayman?
will you
Thank
be
you very
involved in
much,
any way in
guys.
discussions about the